Yeah. So today morning I woke up and every morning I speak to my best friend. Right. In the words of Donald Trump, he's the greatest friend in the world. He knows everything. Whenever I ask him something, he replies back with all the answers. Right. I don't know why his parents named him weirdly. They decided to call him ChatGPT, which is a very weird name for a person. But nonetheless, whenever I ask him stuff, it replies back fairly easily. So today morning, I asked him a very interesting question first. Okay. My first question was, how many people in India have access to the internet? Any guesses? Sorry? Yeah, that's close. 90 crores, right? 90 crores leaves out 50 crore people, which is the population of the entire European Union. Okay, that currently has no internet in India. Out of these 90 crores, how many people till date have shopped online at least once? And this is a July report by McKinsey, like literally this month's report. Yeah, the answer is just 17 crores. Okay, that's just 25%. So we are left with almost 65 crore people who haven't shopped, right? That's 2x the entire population of United States who has access to internet in India but has never shopped, right? Which sort of brings us to the reason for this discussion in the first place. How do we cater to these people plus to the people who do not even have access to internet right now? What's the model to approach them, right? What's the model to get them on board? What's the model to sell to them? And what's the model to make them understand the brands that we have today? So before we start that discussion and deep dive into it, I think the first thing we can do is have a brief introduction from everybody on the panel so that we know who is what and what's the context of what we are speaking to. So Akhila, can we start with you?
Hello. Hi, this is Akhila, and I'm the head of marketing for TTK Prestige. And here to talk about reinventing for the next billion consumers. And while TTK Prestige is a legacy brand, so it's very interesting to be here and have a discussion on how to approach this whole talk.
Absolutely.
Hello everyone, I'm Anand Thakur from Footprynt, co-founder at Footprynt. We are essentially influencer content agency. So we essentially make influencer content, meme content, all sorts of content for brands, and excited to be here for this panel.
Hello. Hi, this is Nitin. I head growth and marketing for Acko Insurance. Excited to be a part of the panel. I think I'll bring in perspective as a brand who doesn't sell to the next billion consumers, but like, yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Saurabh. I am head of marketing at Ather. We make electric scooters. I've been mostly a brand person throughout my life, so very brand and mostly in automobile and now tech kind of space. So hopefully that perspective can enrich this the topic that we're discussing today. And I really don't know, Mihir, whether we can sell to those people who have not bought, ever online.
Yeah, but that's where the challenge is, I think.
Yeah, that might be a different challenge altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Sean. I take care of marketing. I handle marketing for Paragon Footwear. We've been part of your life for, I think, 50 odd years. And since you started the discussion with saying that, 65 crores, that kind of population has not ever shopped online. We are largely an offline driven brand. So I hope to bring some perspective of a legacy brand and how we're leveraging offline and online to grow in the coming years.
Hi, I'm VIDHU Shankar. I'm with the Hindu. I'm the odd man out actually. I'm from the advertising background. I take care of the Karnataka business advertising. Plus, I take care of Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and I head the East business as well. So I am here to talk about how Hindu is doing things differently and how we've pivoted to some extent, how we've pivoted and how we are doing things differently and how we are getting the new billion customers. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And finally, I am Mihir. I'm the founder of 1702 Digital. It's a network agency which itself owns two more agencies, Cord and 1702 Digital. We are based out of Mumbai, Hyderabad, and now newly Gurgaon. So that's a little about us. So let me start with AKHILA, right? Because you started with a very interesting phrase, which was legacy brands. We understand that when we have to sell to the next billion, it's going to be sort of a mix of digital and of course offline. So as a legacy brand, right, that has largely not been on digital, how are you shaping up for your digital journey? What are your next steps? How are you doing it?
Yeah, sure, Mihir. And I mean, I'm glad you said it's because I mentioned legacy and not because, like you said, alphabetical order. But so yes, I mean, Prestige is a name that's very familiar to most of the households in India. And it is a brand that has been around for 75 years. It has a multi-channel approach that, Sean just talked about. And perennially always been offline. But there are so many other channels. We talk to hypermarkets, supermarkets, to the e-commerce space. There are our multi-brand outlets. There's our own exclusive store. So it's literally like Prestige covers every gamut of channel that is to sell and sells through it. And these are also some new, at the first level, therefore, distribution to open up all the channels, because today it's about following the consumer. It's not really about being, where you traditionally sell from, but you go where the consumer goes. The second aspect on digital, which, and I would really like to take a perspective here, because I have a lot of, digital first brands sitting next to me. So I'm going to take a perspective probably to compare the legacy brand versus a digital first brand, and where really we could leverage the legacy. And there are really three spaces in which we could do that. The first is in the sheer consumer trust. So a lot of the new age brands need to build that trust. What we needed to build was experience. We had the trust, but we needed to set certain hygiene in place. Talk about, build the purchase journey, improve our interaction with the consumers online, build advocacy and loyalty, take the consumers to the next level of experience with the brand. And now that we've been given the opportunity of so many touch points, it is important for us to live up to the trust. The second point that legacy brands have an advantage over is data, because you actually have, even if we just add our database from the last 10 years, we'll go upwards of 50 lakh database available at our fingertips, which a lot of the new brands will have to start from scratch. Now what we do with the data is actually where we're going to reinvent. How do we kind of take the next leap using that data? So customization, sending out emailers, how do we then kind of build a cohort through these data points, understand purchase behavior, do product improvements, do customer marketing campaigns with them. The third point that the legacy brands probably are a little different from the new age brands is that there is a lot of, we can leverage the e-com platforms. In a lot of situations, we are considered the category leaders. We drive the volumes for that category. And therefore, there's also a certain price consistency, certain margin consistency that we kind of work with the platforms to build for the category. And very, very rarely do the brands who do multi-channel are able to break the price. Like, they cannot be deep discounting. Yeah. So that's the other aspect that we maintain in the categories, and therefore it helps to kind of build that too. And I have a lot more points, but I'm going to kind of pass it on, because and also on comms, I think to be a multi-pronged thing, it's not just about traditional media anymore, to therefore also do the whole digital marketing and not let the mainline be, because there are also cohorts, right? So while there are multi-channels, there are also generations that we are catering to. And each generation has a different media consumption habit. So, correct. And maybe I can talk on that a little later.
Yeah, of course. No, but you raised a very good point, because when marketers talk about experience and product experience at that, is really when you sort of leverage the brand a lot more, right? Because if you just focus on channel com all the time, it really doesn't give you output. So experience, of course, is probably the key lever for you to reach to the next billion people. But yeah, I mean, you spoke about comms as well. Anand, I'll come to you a little on comms, because you said you do influencer piece as well, right? So today, if you look at the Indian landscape, right, we are an influencer is basically, springing up faster than we go wheat or rice. Correct. Every nook and corner you have an influencer with 5,000 followers, 10,000 followers, right? And all of them are potential, right? They create fantastic content. If you want to reach out to the next billion, how do you reach out to these influencers who are in tier 3 towns, who are in tier 2 towns, right? How do you manage that sort of a scale? Because the tier 1 scale necessarily may not work for them, right? So how do you do that?
Well, before I answer that, right, I think what Akhila mentioned, right, like all brands are going towards where your next customer is, where your next consumer is. And I think most of your consumers are on their phones, right? I mean, we all have them, everybody has them. But before you even talk about tier 2, tier 3, right, I mean, what we see today is obviously you're marketing for India and you're marketing for Bharat. And you have to understand those two cohorts first, right? And if you want to even dive deeper, a lot of brands today would talk about, I want to sell to the younger generation. I want to sell to Gen Zs. The ethos of an India Gen Z versus, let's say, a Bharat Gen Z would be different, right? Like, both will have aspirations, but an India Gen Z is probably looking for something cooler. A Bharat Gen Z is looking for something cooler, but with a value proposition, right? Like, he may not buy an iPhone, but he'll probably buy a OnePlus or a OnePlus Nord. That does the job, but they look for value and consistency, right? So number one is actually understanding what your cohort is, and then you dive deeper into where are these people, right? Now, even when you talk about tier 2, tier 3 cities, a tier 2 town in UP is a lot different than a tier 2 town in Karnataka. So you also have to understand the cultural references. Like, I love talking about this to a lot of meme pages that we work with. In India, pop culture is not just one, homogeneous thing, right? A pop culture reference in Kannada would be a lot different than a cultural reference in Punjabi. So marketeers would need to understand this, and when you look at these two things, then you try to figure out, okay, who are these kind of influencers in what languages? Because it's not just taking the language and picking and saying, hey, I want to create 5 reels in Kannada. With whom? How does that make impact to my brand? Can they translate my messaging and localize it or hyper-localize it where it creates that trust? So I think those are some of the factors you look at, right? And you probably bring the same into your product as well, right? I mean, a great example is probably Meesho, where they used vernacular languages to onboard people. They used tier 2, tier 3 women to do content for them, which actually gained trust for them. So, I mean, these are some of the things you should look at. And yeah.
Fantastic. No, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. When you look at the cohort, you sort of not think of the next billion people. Instead, you think of a million micro markets, right? And then you sort of just start selecting, okay, this is a micro market I want to go after, this is a micro market. And then the content should be created for that micro market, right? So that's absolutely a fairly critical point. Nitin, coming to you, firstly, congratulations on winning Cannes.
Thank you.
It's fantastic. So I think Acko has sort of been the industry leader, I think, when it comes to customer acquisition, right? I was just telling you before as well, genuinely all brands that we work with sort of look at you guys as an aspiration. So I don't think there is another person better right now to tell us about the playbook of acquiring the next billion customers, right? What's that mix sort of looking like, right? How do you even think of this? Because is it the same playbook that you used for the last decade in acquiring your tier 1, tier 2 customers, or are you going to completely flip that playbook?
So I think it's almost like a self-fulfilling question. Like, I don't think the same playbook is going to apply, right? I think, let alone like a decade back, how fast the marketing and the product landscape is shaping and reshaping, like maybe like 2 years, 3 years is also like a long period to look back. So I think like more from an acquisition playbook perspective, right? Hence, I think we need to sort of reinvent and look at it with a new lens, right? Now, lens, I've done some smart acronym work. So lens, how I'm looking at it is there is language, there is experience, there is network, and then there is scale. And you know, maybe I'll take a couple of lines to talk about each, you know, in terms of how we're looking through this. I think language, more from a perspective, I think like what Anand was also speaking, as we are looking to sell and we are looking to build our brands, not just for India 1, but for like India 2 and India 3, right, which is at least what this is report that comes out from Bloom Ventures, right? And then they've done a great job in terms of breaking it up into India 1, India 2, and India 3. Largely, the next billion is actually going to come from India 3, right? Which is where language plays a big role. And I think at least the way to look at language is not just from a translation perspective, but look at it from a lost opportunity to build trust. Language is no longer just, you know, there is Kannada, Malayalam, Telugu, but there are dialects. So how do you speak in each of those upper dialects when you are building either your product, when you're building your comms, your marketing? Not just language, but I think also the tone and the personality of the brand really matters. Like how can you humanize that conversation in a manner that is relevant for them, I think is one pillar that we should definitely look at when we are reinventing it. Second part, experience that, you know, which I spoke about. Again, I think the way to build up a digital first experiences would be very different for like, you know, like even for Acko, like a lot of the product discussions that we have with our product team when we are building for a customer who's sitting out of, say, Bangalore or Bombay, the conversation is how can we make the journey more fast, more seamless. You know, you're optimizing for conversions. But I think for the next set that we are going to acquire, I think the optimization needs to happen not just for conversion, but for confidence, right? Which is where speed is not relevant. How are you hand-holding, how you are making, like, how you are walking through that entire journey where, you know, like, you don't have a call to action, you have a call to comfort, right? So I think that is going to be critical. The third part that I spoke about was network. Again, I think network partially just like taking a cue from what both Anand and AKHILA were saying. I think we need to reimagine distribution and we need to reimagine influence as well. Influencer, while there is one part which is the whole creator economy that is helping you with influence, but for some of these micro markets, I think there are very hyper-local influencers which are a part of their daily life. The Kirana owner is an influencer, right? The like even from the offline world, and we've seen this from Acko as a brand. Radio jockeys in cities are influencers, right? So reimagine the influence layer, and I think scale. If you were to bring all of this together, but the fact that you need to do it for 65 crores or close to $1 billion, if I were to extrapolate, I think that's where the power of AI will now come in, that it will help you do all of this, whether it is language, whether it is experience, whether it is network at scale. So I think that's how I would look to break down the problem.
It's fantastic. I mean, call to comfort is something that sort of should become the vision for each and every brand now that wants to really seriously scale to the next billion. One example I was thinking of, right? What you just said. I was in Prayagraj for the Kumbh.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I unfortunately got stuck there because the exit tickets were very expensive. So I ended up staying longer than I planned to. So I went around the city a lot, right? And I found this brand L'Oreal, right? And which is a fairly premium brand. Okay. I could see what they had done was in every good salon that was present in Prayagraj, you had L'Oreal products. And these are individual salons. Okay, these are salons that are not doing more than 20, 30 lakh a year probably. And L'Oreal had made efforts to go to them to make them understand what retailing their product means and to keep it there, right? Because they knew these are the guys who are the local influencers.
Correct, yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
And in turn, they basically captured the entire market. So that one by one, brick by brick building is something you're absolutely bang on, right? And that's how you do it. So absolutely spot on that.
I think great example. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Saurabh, I'm just leading from where Nitin ended, right? When you talk about network, when you talk about experience, right? For experience, what is also important is creations of new categories for consumers. What we have, what we use currently may not always be something that will make sense for the next billion people, right? A very good example is shampoo, correct? Tier 1 was comfortable with bigger bottles. Tier 3 always wanted sachets. So new SKUs based category was created. In your case, right, where you are doing hardware, sorry, hardware that is anyway difficult to sell. How? Yeah, I'll take it from here. Thanks. How do you see the next billion consumers? How do you create categories for them?
Okay, so yeah, like you're saying, a hardware automobile product works a little differently from a lot of categories that we are discussing here, like Nikhil's category and all that, right? The research is much higher by everybody who does. The decision is very long term, right? And a lot of our research suggests that the consumers that come to the shop floor today have started subconsciously thinking about what they want to buy 12 months back, right? So for us, firstly, it is very important to be perceived as a certain brand much earlier the person is actually in the market. When the person is in the market, they have mostly done their, they have a brand in mind, and they're mostly looking back at sort of revalidating. They do research, but it is more of a revalidation of what they already have a ranking in their mind, right? So that's a fundamental difference we've seen in a lot of categories. Coming to your specific question on how is a brand like us or a product like us looking at capturing the next billion customers, right? So there, I feel that there are obviously these regional nuances we have to go with that everybody spoke about, but I feel that there are also commonalities across India that can be leveraged. And one such big commonality that I see is that we are by and large an upgrading market. We are by and large a market that is going for superior, better experiences. We want near things. We have more experimentation appetite. And that's across. So whoever you are, whichever part of the pyramid you are looking to move to the next one, right? And India is, thankfully, with the way economy is growing and income levels are growing, I think that's a phenomenon that cuts across, right? And therefore, for us, to get the next wave of customers, it is very important to be a brand that is perceived as something that is more premium, more advanced, right? Something that is of the next, at the cusp of technology. A lot of those things matter a lot for us. So therefore, the point that AKHILA was saying, while trust works for the old folks, what doesn't work for them is the tech credentials, right? R&D credentials, right? And that's where a lot of effort that hardware brand like Ather has, and now club this with the point I was saying, that they're thinking 12 months in advance, right? So you have to do a real work at almost all points to position yourself as a brand that is really shaping next kind of experiences in whichever domain you're, or in specifically into, let's say in our case, two-wheelers. We are trying to make scooters, let's say, not something that moves you from point A to point B, but there's a lot of mini experiences, how it, maybe how car-like features can come there, how connectivity can play a role. And going by how people are liking these experiences in other categories, like, let's say, mobile phones or even FMCG, if you see. I mean, if I look at anecdotally around my house, I mean, people used to, or in my own house, we used to use the normal washing machine with a normal powder. Now then it came this thing with a advanced machine with now liquid, and now within liquid there is some superior thing coming in, and there are some now small tablet sort of things coming in. And so, and this is in the last 10 years I've seen that upgrade, right? So that's the opportunity that brand like us wants to leverage, because that's where I think we feel that eventually, and specifically in a category like scooters, not much premiumization has happened historically. We are trying to create that, right? If you see, let's say, bikes or mobile phones, a lot of premiumization has happened, right? You see, even right from 10,000 to you'll have now mobile phones, I mean, what, lakhs, right? Bikes, you'll have even cars for that matter, right? You'll see a lot of premiumization. So we are trying to bring that premiumization in scooters, because we are reasonably sure that with more and more, with the convenience of this scooter as a category, with women workforce coming in, with level of incomes going up, with working people like you and me wanting to use this for the convenience, with infrastructure improving, more and more people will come to this segment, and they would want not the same old experience. They would want something new. How can we create something really meaningful and new? So that's one big way in which our product is playing a role. How is it that we are complementing it with marketing? I think on the regional thing everybody spoke about, I'll just add one point there. What we have realized is that it is not about just speaking in that language that you want to speak to, because you have to speak to, now being an Indian brand, we have to go to tier 2, tier 3, all of them. For us, it is about thinking in that language, right? I mean, we suffered a lot because by default, most brands, I mean, they will translate, but they will not think in that language. I mean, I remember, and just to give you a specific example, long back we were working on how we introduced one of our premium products called Apex, and it was on very good on speed, etc., and the headline was the new law of motion. Now, try your luck translating it in any other language, right? It is impossible to capture that feeling that we have captured in English, but very difficult to do it in. So we realized that unless we start thinking in regional, in that language, right, it will not work. So, and regional in India can mean 29, 30, and multiplied with dialects, it can mean a lot of things. But at least at a 4 or 5 big language group levels, we have started conceptualizing campaigns right from scratch in that language. And that makes a lot of difference, because once you have cracked the idea in that language, then you'll get media partners, you'll get influencers, because because in culturally you've got it, right? So that's one nuance I'll add to the part that I think others have added.
I just wanted to address the premiumization sentence, because many brands have fallen into the pitfall of premiumization. And one of the dangers of just doing premiumization without the laddering of the value is that you end up creating a product and then you end up selling 2 pieces of it and then wonder why are people are not picking it up. So one of the things about premiumization, at least in my view, is that there has to be a scale from which you leap onto premiumization or you enter at premiumization. So what's been happening in the markets now is, and coming from a legacy brand, is that you kind of have 10 niche brands who each has taken a specific proposition and sliced the same market. So if Prestige is like, maybe the cooker market, you have one person who does tri-ply, one person who will come and do a cast iron, there's one person who will come and do enamel, or somebody will come and say, I'll do only kadhai cookware. And these guys are now doing this 1%. They're not necessarily premiumizing, but they're becoming more niche and therefore able to customize, be more regional, speak to the cohort far better than a mass brand is able to. So there's got to be a difference in the premiumization, the way a mass brand tends to do it and the way a niche brand will tend to do it. And that's, I think, the point that I wanted to add.
Fantastic. And Saurabh, so I think you're spot on here, because whether it is the first billion or the next billion, something that remains common is the Indian aspiration. Right? The aspiration to jump the classes and to, keep going well. I was reading a report recently, I forgot who wrote it, but it was called The Great Leap. Okay. So these bunch of people went and did a lot of studies and they found something very interesting. So there was this entire generation where our forefathers were as well, who used to travel in trains in the second class, right? Or without tickets, right? Just get in and do that travel, right? A logical progression of that would be that the next generation went to second class AC or first class AC. What they found out was that the next generation, which is the current generation now, is traveling in airlines, right? That's a great leap. You went from second class to airlines, right? So you literally cut across multiple categories and established a completely new one. And similarly, even for daily products like edible oil, forefathers were consuming, loose oil, right, from your local vendors. The young batch did not just go for packaged oil. So from cottonseed to cottonseed is not what they did. They went directly to rice bran oil, right, which is like a very premium version of oil. So it's absolutely true what you're saying, that if you establish a category which appeals to the aspirations, then it cuts across. And on your second point...
But I'll just add to AKHILA's point, and she's right in saying that you have to, so there has to be a fine balance there. I have seen a lot of brands where the ideas are much ahead of time. So that balance, I think, has to be there.
Yes.
But eventually, I think I have seen experiences upgrading. I think so. You have to maintain that balance. We ourselves have launched many times services. By the way, a lot of services that we did in India 5 years back, Tesla is doing in US now, because they're also a connected vehicle, right? For example, something like let's say very simple called trip planner, right? Where if you have limited charge and you have to go to a certain destination, you plug it in and we'll plan the entire route from you, including where the charges are, whether they are free, whether they are not. It will give you full map. We did it 5 years back. Tesla is doing it, they've done it recently. At that time, that feature did not fly. Now that feature of ours is flying. So that's at the feature level, right? Because suddenly a lot of people are appreciating, oh, Tesla ne kiya.
Yeah.
Right? So some ideas sometimes are ahead of time. But I think eventually at least a brand like ours is trying to ride the wave of premiumization, and that's how cater to the next billion.
Fantastic. I think on your second point, right, which is thinking in local language, I remember a joke which actually happened. So the first time Nike opened a store in Jaipur, obviously the mandate was to convert everything to Hindi, like Nike in Hindi and all that, because it's mandated. And the person who was doing it was very enthusiastic, and he said, Nike bus kar lo. Right? Because they literally translate, just do it. So it completely resonate with that point. Shawn, coming to you, I think you built brands, right, over the years, right? You built categories. I wanted to understand, right? So if you look at the last decade of how brands have been built in India, so there have been largely two playbooks, right? One is the playbook of your sugar cosmetics, Mamaearth, Whole Truth, which is sort of built as DTC brands, right? And then scale to other channels. Other is sort of the Atomberg model, I would say, right? Which is built on marketplace and then figure out what you want to do in DTC, even if you want, or directly go retail, right? What do you see is the right channel mix or the future of model for the next billion? Is it something like this or is it completely different?
So I'm glad you started with that, and which I commented on, is that a large part of the country is still buying offline, and somewhere when we go to all these conferences, we interact with, everybody only wants to hear about online, D2C, marketplace, and digital. Okay, so my friend here from print, gets ignored, and there are some out-of-home, partners here. The point being that I don't think any one, channel would do the trick. I mean, even going forward. Not just India. I mean, if you see globally also, e-commerce has not put retail out of business, right? Online there's still an experiential thing. Like you mentioned about Nike, and Nike is a classic example. Some of you may know, and if you don't, Google the case study that recently happened where the CEO had to step down. They had to replace him because there was too much focus on online and not enough on offline. Right, the trade channels, the trade partners, they actually ignored the trade partners and they paid a price for it, and now they have to recuperate and new leadership, etc. My point being that Paragon is largely an offline distribution-led brand. 90% plus of our business comes from offline channels, regular channels, which is mostly multi-brand. We have a few exclusive stores, but largely it's multi-brand outlets. A lot of it, what the panelists have spoken about, starting AKHILA, because I think you've, I don't know, coincidentally or deliberately kept us on opposite sides of the panel so that, the new age guys are sandwiched between us. But she's spoken about this, and I resonate what she said about how the idea is to balance all these channels. So we have your offline, regular multi-brand outlets, exclusive outlets, department stores, etc. And of course, marketplace and D2C. We have a D2C platform. We are present on all marketplaces. But at the same time, what we are trying to do is try and figure out an omni-channel approach, wherein we try and address different consumer needs of different segments. Okay, so we have 3 brands, Paragon being the mother brand and the legacy brand, which we're all aware of. We have 2 other brands which we launched just before COVID, Stimulus and Econ. And these brands are the ones which we leverage on the online platforms, on marketplace, on our own D2C platform, and as well as offline. So there's a digital first approach for a couple of these brands, and a very slightly more traditional approach for the main brand, which is the mother brand, which is Paragon. it's a major challenge for a legacy brand like us that when we are constantly pressured by market forces that there's a push and pull. So our dealers will say, अरे आप wall printing क्यों नहीं करते हो, आप ये क्यों नहीं करते हो, आप hoarding क्यों नहीं लगाते हो वगैरह. And when we come to conferences or media partners say, we will increase your conversion, we will increase your this rate at blah 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 and all the fantastic metrics and conversions online. And it's a fine balance that the management has to play to see what works best for the company, what works best for the brands, without ignoring the channel conflict. So Akhil also mentioned about the pricing. So that's one very important part that of our entire system, because what we price online and offline, it impacts our trade partners as well as consumers. And that creates a very big thing. So my point is that to answer your question, I don't think going forward it will be we can just focus on one particular channel and ignore the rest. We have to figure out how to balance both online and offline. Look at the purely online players, right? The D2C players. They have ventured into offline retail for a certain reason, right? I mean, you see Lenskart, you mentioned a couple of brands. They've all figured out that just online is not going to work. We need to have the offline presence. We need to have the customer experience in the stores. And for our consumers who's, in that 65 crores, largely in that 65 crores who don't shop online but have a mobile phone, they're exposed to a communication. And I'll talk about language a little later, but because people spoke about language and which is very relevant. But at the same time, they are still not comfortable shopping online. They still want to go to a store, try the footwear, see how it works. I'll give you this is something new to me because I'm new to the footwear category. When I went to summer dealer meets initially when I joined the company, somebody told me that, the way they used to buy Hawaii chappals, and some people still do it, is they bite it. They bite the chappal to see if this thing is one thing, bending is one thing. They actually bite it to see if it's hard enough so that it will last them for a good amount of time, or is it, genuine or fake, and the thickness matters. So I'm just I could never even imagine, because I spent a lot of time in Raymond, selling very premium products, suits and shirts, and then I'm like, chappal who puts a chappal in the mouth? Obviously before buying it, but that's the kind of consumer we're talking about. Now you expect that consumer to go online and shop. It'll take some time. It'll take some time. At the same time, quick commerce has worked wonders for us. It is just crazy. My team is sitting here and, they would, vouch for what I'm saying. The management would never imagine that quick commerce will actually work in a category. Like, who will buy chappals and footwear, in 10 minutes or whatever? And we told them, people are buying iPhones, but that's just a marketing gimmick. But it has just gone through the roof. We are not able to keep up with the demand of quick commerce. So, in fact, that is now becoming more lucrative than marketplace. So, these are the, kind of balancing act that we have to do. On one hand, you have quick commerce. On the other hand, you have a very traditional multi-brand outlet where people buy chappals and whatnot. So, that's the balancing act that legacy brands have to do for like us.
My first learning, Vishu, is that we are going to run display ads of people biting chappals.
But I think that quick commerce is like a very real phenomena right now. Maybe like for all we know, it could be one of these great leaps that you're talking about, right? Where people, who've not experienced, like buying online, etc., don't really move to e-commerce and then quick commerce, but their first leap is to quick commerce itself. And I think that's a very real trend that
just like the giant leap what you spoke about, in India, I'm sure most people are aware that we jumped from first people started experiencing internet for the first time on their mobile phones. We are the country where it's a mobile first internet phenomenon. I mean, that's nowhere in the world. Everybody has moved from desktops, laptops to then mobile, and we have done it the other. So that's how, I guess, yeah.
Also, to add to the point, I think the dichotomy that a lot of the retail first brands face is that e-com as a channel shows the highest growth for us. But there is 80% of the business that comes from trade. So it's impossible to really choose. You can't let go of 80% of the business, and yet it's growing at single digits. And you have e-com, which is contributing to 20% of the business, but like growing at high, 40%, 30%. So that kind of will always remain for us to balance both of them forever.
I think what you need is like a quick commerce experience with like an artificial intelligence based thing that can help them experience how they're biting the chappal.
How does a chappal taste?
How does the chappal taste?
But, I'll tell you, automobiles mostly sell offline. They don't sell online at all because there are other government complications. You have to get the vehicle registered. There is a subsidy and other things. But I tell you, when I go to some of these, when I meet some of my colleagues from the from quick commerce industry or Amazons of the world or a lot of brands that are selling online, I feel a little bit of FOMO sometimes. Because the online sales part is, India is very wide. So while there is obviously today the market, I think good amount sells offline for most brands, right? 80% sale would be happening there. But that online sale part is, I think, is surely growing. So one of the big endeavors that we have is how can we make our vehicles shoppable online? Because the moment we do that, the distribution, or in fact both categories that I've worked for. I worked for automobile, I've also worked for paints. Right? One of the biggest barriers for small or new paints companies to grow is distribution. The moment you have online, you've made your product online shoppable, you will net off that advantage by by the leaders, and then you can go to and I think some industries like mobile phones and all have been disrupted by that phenomena. So I think it will be important for all brands to figure out the online journey. For near future, I feel maybe next 5-10 years, the coexistence will be there. But there has to be a point where, at least I feel, where things are not too experiential, where you're buying something really standard. Is brand ki ye cheez hai, theek hogi, people will buy it. Because there are people who are buying now standard TVs, mobile phones, seedha ghar aa jate hain, experience ka nahi hai. But everything that requires a new experience, touch, feel, for example, when electrics came first, now they are becoming a little more mainstream. Let's say tomorrow hydrogen vehicles come, right? People will still want to go and try hydrogen, chalta kaisa hai, test ride kaisa hota, they'll have to go to a showroom. But a standard thing like an Activa or a Splendor, maybe people will start moving a little early. So if it is a standard thing, you've seen it in your neighborhood, I think chances of you buying online ordering would be higher. But yeah, by and large, I feel in the near future, it has to be a coexistence.
Absolutely. No, Sean, fantastic. I think one brand that I'm thinking of, right, that has done this really well as well is Decathlon. So I was talking to one of the senior executives there. So how their playbook today works, right, when it comes to expansion of retail across tier 2, tier 3 towns. So for them, the problem is that expansion is fairly expensive. The smallest store config that they have will cost them 5 crores, right? So if this doesn't work, it's like 3-4 crores at least down the drain. So what they do now is, they first try to reach out digitally, okay? And they have fairly defined metrics, saying that if I spend 50 lakh and I get 1 crore from it, I know this catchment is ready for sports, okay? And now that it's ready, let me invest 5 crores, right? And now I've recovered on 5 crores, let me now do a 25 crore store. And then I'm putting the 100 crore store, right? So it's very calculated. It starts with online and it really leads to the offline zone, right? So it's fantastic omni that way. So absolutely on point, Sean. Vishu, I think, yeah, Sean mentioned, right? So the most interesting person on the panel, because not from digital, but from print. So very unique, and the only one who got a woo from the crowd. So yeah, absolutely. Yes. So I think my question for you, right? So today, obviously, internet is fairly cheap in India. Even then, it hasn't basically reached the end point. Still 45 crore people without internet. Still a lot of people not accessing it regularly, correct? What role does newspaper have for these set of users, right? How do you utilize newspapers to reach out to consumers for the next billion who are unable to, for whatever reason, access the internet or have stable internet?
See, again, India is a very large country, right? Now, like Sean had said, online and offline both exist, right, and do well. So in our case, it is, again, there are multiple vehicles to help the consumers take the messaging forward. And there are multiple vehicles, and all vehicles will exist. Print will exist, digital will exist. More so, I would like to talk about ourselves in a different way. See, we have digital, of course we have digital, we have brand solutions, we do everything, right? And we have embraced the technology long back. Just to put things in context, we are the highest subscribed news, as a news site in the country, highest subscribed with 5 lakh subscription, paid subscription. Now, there was a time earlier when for 200 rupees we had cable TV getting 100 channels, right? Now, that time we thought nobody's gonna pay for print, nobody's gonna pay for content. But look at the scenario right now. You're paying separately for Netflix, you're paying separately for Amazon, everything, right? So I think if you come out with excellent content, that which of course Hindu is known to bring out authentic content. So if you get that kind of content, I'm sure there are people willing to pay, right? Just to again put things in context. Okay, we started our online version of the newspaper in 1995. New York Times did it in 1996, just to tell you about it. So we have embraced technology long back, and we're doing a lot of things in print. Of course, print is the bread and butter for us, right? And as AKHILA mentioned one thing about legacy brands. Of course, Hindu is a legacy brand. I think we are 146 years old, by the way. So what digital disruptors, as you call them, can do in different things in terms of reach, of course, we can't compete with digital on reach. But what we can do is, see, legacy also brings in certain amount of understanding of our customers, right? Because we've been there for 146 years serving these customers. We know them in and out. So if there's a brand which comes to us saying that they want to build their brand, there are multiple ways that we can do because we understand the market the best, right? We understand more than anybody else. So we can carry the communication of the clients to in the most appropriate way to all the brands. So there are events that we can do. There are, we can do it through some of the relevant write-ups and advertorials as they call. Now, again, very interesting, going back to, again, print, how we are getting the next breed of consumers coming in. Just to tell you, we connect with 5,000 schools, okay, which is called the Hindu in schools, right? So there are multiple products that we actually give, multiple products that we use in the schools. There is something called Young World, which is again for class 3 to 8, right? And from class 9 to 12, there's a product called Hindu in School, which is very relevant with the curriculum that the school has. So this is every day that we distribute, you know. So that's where the next set of readers would come, right?
Fantastic. I think one point you mentioned that we sort of, always forget when we talk about digital, mainline, marketplace, whatever, is that content is king, right? And any channel, be it newspaper, digital, that sells quality content is where ultimately your readers will go, correct? So that's a fair point. And as long as newspapers keep doing that, they are always a viable channel for you to expand to the next billion.
Just to add again, I think one of the points on media and the way traditional media has evolved is, and brands like Prestige have traditionally been using traditional media. But if I don't look at any specific provider or a media name, the space that print is occupying or the space that radio is occupying or the space that out of home is occupying has seen rapid transformation. So print today has the QR codes through which you are immediately transported into digital. You have Flan through which the visual ad actually pops up. The radio is innovating in terms of moving on to online radio and doing podcasts. Podcast is becoming a big medium for us to start using. out of home has started moving into digital out of homes, into interactive out of homes, into spaces where they're innovating in out of homes. While it may not be the same lineage or the media agencies doing it, but the space of media, traditional media, is evolving equally fast and rapidly.
That's a fantastic point. Like, mainline is becoming digital and digital is becoming mainline at the same time.
See, every media, every vehicle is actually serving a purpose, right? So it depends on the communication that the client wants to have. And yeah, I'm sure all the clients would want to take all medias, but having said that, our budgets are always limited. So it depends on
the next billion to
that one
come.
wants to. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I think the buzzers already are, the next billion will come in and they will discuss on the next panel maybe. I think because we are short on time, if one or two quick questions, otherwise we can close the panel.
I thought we were the last panel, no? So,
Yeah, okay, we are the last.
if we are the last panel, let's go.
Do we have any questions?